day, Mom. Good day, classmates. So, we are the Group 2. So, before we proceed to the main discussion, or before we tackle the topic, first, let me introduce to you my group mates. So, we have Rowena Montero, Nina Rosauro, Mary Rose Uteda, and of course, Kathleen Claire Cartagena Wenceslao, their leader. So, unta no, hinaot unta, maminaw mo sa among discussion o naamoy ma-utlo ng mga pagtulunan. Unsa pa'y dugayan? Arat mo! First, we have the learning objectives. So, after listening to our report, you should be able to 1. Determine what is probability and its history. 2. Types of probability. 3. Determine the types of events. 4. Identify and compute a simple probability. 5. To know the properties of a normal distribution. And the last, number 6, describe how the values of a variable are distributed. So, what is probability? So, probability is a branch of mathematics concerning numerical descriptions of how likely an event is to occur, or how likely it is the proposition is true. The probability is an event is the number between 0 and 1, where roughly speaking, 0 indicates impossibility of the event, and 1 indicates the certainly. So we have here the history of the word probability. So the word probability derived from the Latin word probabilitas, which can also mean probity, a measure of the authority of a legal case in Europe, and often correlated with the witness nobility. So here are some details about the probability. So, Gerolamo Cardano, known as the father of probability, he lived in the 16th century. He lived in Italy and was a Renaissance mathematician. The word probability was used in relation to the mathematics of chance in 1662 in the Logic of Port Royal, written by Pascal's fellow Jansenists Antoine Arnaud and Pierre Nicole. So, to make it simple, probability is used to describe how likely or unlikely it is that something will happen. Ako balikon, it is likely or unlikely is that something will happen. So, probability of events, the probability of an event, P, open parenthesis event, close parenthesis, is a number from 0 to 1, which tells how likely the event happens. Nasabtan ang mga classmates? So, para mas masabtan pag yun ninyo, let's have an example. So, we have here example number 1. The weather forecaster says that the probability that it will rain today is 75%. Does it means that there is a great chance that it will rain today? So take a closer look at the probability line. The value of probability starts from 0 to 1. Probability may be given in fraction, decimal, or percent. 0 in probability means impossible to happen, while 1, which is 100%, means the event is certain to happen, while 1/2 or 50% means an event is either as likely or as unlikely. The event between 0 to 1/2 is unlikely to happen. Remember that the closer it is to 0, the more unlikely the event is to happen. For example, if the probability is 1/4 or 0.25 or 25%, the likelihood of the event to happen is unlikely, since it is between 0 and 1/2 or 50%. Well, if the event is between 1/2 to 1, the event is likely to happen. Always remember that the closer it is to 1, the more likely it is to happen. For example, if the probability is 3/4, which is 0.75 or 75%, the likelihood of the event will happen is likely, since it is between 1/2 and 1, or 50% and 100%. So, wa pagid masabtan, ay kaproblema. Let's have another example. Let's say in a box there's 1 yellow cube, 2 blue cubes, and 2 green cubes, a total of 5 cubes. Without looking, what is the probability of picking yellow cube out of the box? But how do we get the probability? To determine the probability, we need to divide the number of favorable outcomes by the number of possible outcomes. Favorable outcomes are the specific outcome you are looking for. In the question, we are looking for the probability of picking yellow cube. Here, we can see that we only have 1 yellow cube, so that is our favorable outcome, divided by the number of possible outcome, which is the total number of all the possible outcomes in an event. Here we have the sample space, or the list of the total number of all the outcomes, which are 1 yellow, 2 blue, and 2 green, a total of 5 cubes. It means that we have 5 possible outcomes. Now in a fraction form, the probability is 1/5. To convert this to decimal, just divide 1 by 5, which is 0.20 or 20%. In the probability line, the likelihood of this event is unlikely to happen, since it is closer to 0 or between 0% and 50%. Wonderful! Let's have another example. Now, what if we are looking for probability of picking blue cube out of the box? So this time, I will give you 1 minute to solve and find the answer. Okay, time is up. Let's check if your answers is correct. Again, to determine the probability, just simply divide favorable outcomes by the possible outcomes. Here, the favorable outcomes are the blue cube. Since we have 2 blue cubes, it means that we have 2 favorable outcomes, divided by the total number of possible outcomes, which is 5. Now, in fraction form, the probability is 2/5. To convert this to decimal, just divide 2 by 5, which is 0.40 or 40%. In the probability line, the likelihood of this event is unlikely, since it is between 0% and 50%. So we have here the probability rules. 1. The probability of any event is a number, either a fraction, a decimal, or a percent, from 0 to 1. 2. If an event will never happen, then the probability is 0. 3. If an event is sure to happen, the probability is 1. And number 4, the sum of all the probabilities of all the outcomes in the sample space is 1.
So next, we're going to define what is dependent and independent events. So para dali nato mailhan ug mahibaw-an ug masabtan kung unsa nang meaning anang duha ka event, so let's do this activity first. So just state the result of the first event affects the result of the second event. So I have here five events. So first is the studying hard or getting high grade. Second is eating a lot, gaining weight. Third is playing computer games, submitting all assignments and projects, tossing a coin, rolling a die and getting a number 6. And last is attending the singing lesson in raining today. So, atong tanawon ang number 1. So for number 1, sa imong tan-aw, maka-affect ba ang first event sa second event? Yes, maka-affect gyud no. It's because kung study hard ta, so syempre, ang atong grade is mudako. So the event number 1 affect the event number 2. So ang second is maka-affect gihapon. It's because kung mukaon tagdaghan nga pagkaon, syempre, ang ato ang weight is mudako gayud. So, third is, maka-affect gihapon na ang first event sa second event. It's because if we are going to play computer games, so syempre, maapektahan gyud ang pag-submit nato sa atong projects o assignments. And sa number 4, tan-awon nato. Tossing a coin, rolling a die, and getting number 6. So sa imong tan-aw, maka-affect ba ang first event sa second event? Syempre dili no, kay dili man siya ka-affect sa result sa ikaduha nga event. So mao gihapon sa number 5. Dili gihapon siya maka-affect ang first event sa second event. So meaning ang number 1, 2, and 3 is what we call dependent event, while ang number 4 or 5 is independent event. So, the dependent event are those that are affected the outcomes events that had already occurred previously. 2 or more events that depend on one another are known as the dependent events. So, if one event is by chance change, then another is likely to differ. So, the dependent event is the event nga ang first event is naka-affect sa second event. So, meaning, the result of the event affects to the result of another event. So while ang independent event are those events whose occurrence is not dependent on any other events. So from the word independent, so makastand in its own. So if the probability of occurrence of an event A is not affected by the occurrence of another event B, then A and B are said to be independent events. So, ang independent event is ang iyang occurrence sa isa ka event wala naka-affect sa occurrence sa other events. So, therefore, ang katong number 4 o 5 is mauto siya ang atong gitawag nga independent events. Then, ang number 1, 2, 3, mauto siya ang atong gitawag nga independent events. So, that is dependent and independent events. Now, let's tackle the types of probability. So, the first type of probability is the theoretical probability. So, it describes how likely an event is to occur. So, we all know that a coin is equally likely to land heads or tail. So, the theoretical probability of getting heads is 1/2. So, the theoretical probability is a mathematical computation. So while the experimental probability describes how frequently an event actually occurred in an experiment. So, if you toss a coin 20 times and got heads 8 times, so the experimental probability of getting heads would be 8 over 20, which is the same as 2/5 or 0.4 or 40%. So, ang experimental probability is found by repeating an experiment and observing the outcomes. So, meaning to say, ang experimental kay mao na siya ang actual nato nga buhaton if we are going to create an activity or experiment. So, can we find the experiment probability of an event? So, we need to conduct an experiment and record the number of times the event occurs, the number of times the activity is performed. So, we need to divide two numbers to obtain the experimental probability. So, in symbol, therefore, the probability of the event is equal to the number of times occurs over the number of trials, while the theoretical probability event is the number of ways the event can occur. So, meaning ana, in symbol, probability of event is equal to the number of the outcome over the total of the possible outcome. So, kung atong makita diha sa gipakita namo below, so ato jud makita kung unsa jud ka ang kalahian sa theoretical probability and experimental probability. So, I am give you an example. So, let's have the example of experimental and theoretical probability. So, for experimental probability, if I am give you an example, so for example, a coin is tossed 8 times. So, since it is experimental probability man, so let's assume that the head comes out 5 times. So, atong i-assume nga ang pag-toss nato sa coin is 5 times ang ni comes out sa head. Then, ang tail is 3 times. So, how to get the probability? So, unsaon man nato pagkuha ang probability ana sa tail o sa head. So, using the formula, probability of an event equals the number of the event occur over the number of trials. So, we have the probability of the head. Since ang head man ang nigawas niya 5 times man out of 8 trials, so we can say that the probability of the head is 5 over 8. And also, the probability of the tail, so ang probability sa tail comes out 3 times out of 8 trials. So, ang probability sa tail is katuluman siya ni gawas pag toss nato sa coin out of 8 times. So, 3 over 8 ang probability sa tail. So, nasabtan ra atong balikon ha. So, if ang nigawas sa kanang head is 5 times out of 8 trials, so we can say that the probability of the head is 5 over 8. And also, the probability of the tail, kay kuan man ang nigawas, ang iyang outcome is katuluman out of 8 trials, so we can say that the probability of the tail is 3 over 8. So, So I have here also the example of theoretical probability. So how about sa theoretical probability? So if I am give you an example, number one example, a coin is tossed. So ganina sa experimental probability dito gi-state o kapila gi-toss ang coin. So 8 times man to no. Then ang diri sa theoretical probability, wala gi-state diri kung kapila gi-toss ang coin. Ingani ra siya, a coin is tossed, ingana ra jud. So kung mag-toss tag coin, duha ra jud ang posibilidad nga mahitabo. It's either mahayang or makaob. So we can predict that based on mathematics that 1/2 or 50%, so since duha ra man ang posibilidad, so 50-50 ra of the tosses will land head up. So for the probability of the head is equals to 1/2 because isa ra man ang head nga mogawas out of 2 possible outcome. So for the tail also is we have also 1/2 since usa ra man gihapon ang possible nga outcome nga mugawas. So ato gid makita, unlike sa experimental is daghan gid kaayo possibilities, while ang theoretical is 50-50. So 1/2.
Good day everyone. So in this video, we will discuss the lesson about normal distribution. Okay, so the shape and the position of the normal distribution curve depends on two parameters, the mean and the standard deviation. Each normally distributed variable has its own normal distribution curve, which depends on the values of the variables, mean and standard deviation. So, the larger the standard deviation, the more dispersed or spread out the distribution becomes. What are the properties of normal distribution? First, the distribution curve is a bell shape. So, pareha sa inyong nakita sa picture, the curve is symmetrical about its center. So, meaning, ang value or ang area niya is equal sa iyang area sa right side. The mean, median, and mode coincide at the center. So, makita naman nato sa picture no kanang murag view. The tails of the curve flatten out indefinitely along the horizontal axis. The tails of the curve flatten out indefinitely along the horizontal axis but never touch it. So, murag asymptotic siya, meaning kaning tail sa normal distribution niya, wala nag-touch sa x-axis niya, okay? Kaya asymptotic, man siya good, meaning murag duol or mabot ra siya sa iyahang line. The area under the curve is 1. So, meaning, the area under the normal distribution that is equal to 1. It represents the probability or proportion or the percentage associated with specific sets of measurement values. Okay, so again, ihang area sa normal distribution that is equal to 1 or 100%. So, naatay gitawag na empirical rule for a normal distribution. In a normal distributions, approximately 68% of the data lie within one standard deviation of the mean. So, tanawa lang ninyo sa picture. 95% of the data lie within 2 standard deviation of the mean. 99.7% of the data lie within 3 standard deviation of the mean. So, let's have an example. Okay, ang focus na to, ang topic is kung saan na to pagkuha ang areas under the normal distribution. So, para makuha na to ang areas under the normal distribution, we can use this table. So, saan paggamit ani para makuha ang corresponding areas sa z-value ani. So, tanaw lang na to sa picture kanang naa sa left side sa first column, mao na siya ang z-value. Niya kanang naa sa ibabaw, that's what we call 100 place of a z-value. So, saan paggamit? So, first, express the given z-value into a 3-digit form. Second, using the z-table, find the first 2 digits on the left column. Third, match the third digit with the appropriate column on the right. Fourth is read the area or probability of the intersection of the row and column.
Okay guys, I am Nana Costas Rosaro, so here the example. For example, find the area that corresponds to z equals to 2. So yung z equals to 2 is parihara kung nakita ninyo between z equals 0 and z equals to 2. Or using intervaluation, which is the z is greater than to 0 but less than to 2. Or you should be greater than or equal. So, okay. Between 0 and 2, so aton pangitaon ang 2's using a table. So, ang z, ang equivalent sa z kay makitaan sa left side's first column. So, makita nito ang 2.0, 2.1. But, ang aton man given or aton z kay no decimal, so ato pilingon ang 2.0. Ang 2.0 aton itungo sa 0.00 kay wa may decimal ang ato given. So, ang ila intersection nila, that is 0.4772. So, amo na ang corresponds to z equals to 2. So, therefore, makita sa graph. So between 0 and 2, so, anong isyida na itom, nakita nyo sa screen, amo na ang normal distribution sa 0.4772. Okay, another example. So, z equals 2.47. So, anon man natin pagkuha sa 2.47. So, first is aton pangitaon ng is a whole number of ang 10 plus. So, ang whole number sa 2.47 which is 2, then ang 10 plus is 4. That's why 2.4. So, ang 2.4 aton pangitaon sa table which is the equivalent to z ang 2.4. So, pag mo kita sa 2.4, sunod natin pangitaon ang 7 or 0.07. Pagkakita nimo sa 0.07, makita na nimo ang ila intersection which is the 0.4932. So, amo na ang isa corresponds sa z equals to 0.47. So, guys, sibon sa na paggamit sa table para makuha ang area sa normal distribution. So, what if guys kung ang given kay negative? So, pananglitan ang atang given kay negative. For example, negative 2.47. So, ang ato gyapon answer kay positive kay since kay ang symmetrical sila kung ang negative 2.47 ang answer gyapon kay 0.4932. So, makita alda ang isa graph sa screen. So guys, here's another example para makaibaw gusod ka mo kung anon pagkuha. So, next is determine the area under the standard normal curve to the right of z. So, to the right of 1.63. So, gamit ang graph, so first nimo buhaton is imo anay kuha ng area sa 1.63 sa using a table. So, kay ba naman ta kung anong pagkuha sa area of normal distributions using a table, kay ako naman to i-discuss before sa ni. So, ang area sa 1.63 is 0.4484. Pero, dili ni amo ang atong gipangita. Ang atong gipangita kay ang isa right side sa area to the right side of area naton. So, si anong nakitan. So, anang nakakita ka mo gamay na gishade na color black. So, amo na ang area na atong gipangita. So, pilay value sana. So, isulti mo ganina na ang atong properties kay symmetrical. So, therefore, kung ini kay 0.5, so 0.5 dat ni hangtod sa kinalasan. So, ano na atong pagkuha sa ni? So, aton i-subtract. So, ang aton nakuha na area na correspond sa 1.63, that is 0.4484. So, aton i-minus sa 0.5. So, amo ni aton buhaton basta left to the right of means aton i-subtract. So, 0.05 minus 0.4484. So, ang answer kay 0.516. So, amo na ang aton value. So, another example. Between z equals 1.03 and z equals negative 0.37. So, guys, duha na ang value sa z. So, ano mini na baguha? So, dili kita mabalaka kay sa sundaning. So, ang aton first buhaton is same ra sa pagkuha naton pag niagi is kwaon naton ang isa ang ila area sa 1.03 og negative 0.37 gamit ang table. So, ang area sa 1.03 is 0.3485 and ang area sa negative 0.37 is 0.1443. So, kay negative man siya, so ang ako mag-isulti ganina basta negative is positive gihapon. So now, basta same gani ang sign is basta same ang sign sa given, ang z value kay aton i-minus. Pero ang aton given kay different man na ang sign na ay positive ug na ay negative. So ang area nila kay aton i-plus. So ito nang aton i-plus. So aton i-plus ang 0.3485 plus 0.1443. So, the answer is 0.4928. So, amo na ang isa answer.
Okay, let's summarize. So, therefore, in our topic, we already did and know what is probability. And again, probability is the branch of mathematics concerning numerical description of how likely an event is to occur or how likely it is that a proposition is true. Then, ato usab na tackle ang history about probability. So, we have also the probability rules and the two types of event. So, we have the dependent and independent event. Kung diin, ang dependent event is, ang isa ka event is maka-affect siya into other event. While ang independent event is maka-stand siya in its own. So, dili siya maka-affect sa usa ka event. Then, we have also the types of probability, that is theoretical and experimental probability. Then, we have also the normal distribution. Then, and statistic. A normal distribution is a type of continuous probability distribution. And we have also done the properties of normal distribution. So, ma'am, classmates, that would be all. Og hinaut unta nga inyong nasabtan ang amuang recorded nga report. And if you have some questions and clarifications, So don't hesitate to PM me or ang ako ang mga ka-group mates. Then again, kami ang group 2 nga nagaingon. The most important thing in life is to stop saying I wish and start saying I will. So consider nothing impossible, then treat possibilities as probabilities. Thank you.
Before we end our discussion, I will give you an assignment to assess if naminaw bagin mo sa among whole discussion. So, hinay man ang signal, so I will send it later to the classroom. So, just visit and para ma-aware mo kung unsay mga buhat na nun. And that's all. I think that's all, ma'am, and thank you.